Okay, I'd like to reconvene the Transportation Commission meeting and welcome the Cascades West Area Commission on Transportation. Wonderful to see you all. We had a chance to have lunch together, but I will, now we have an opportunity to talk about the interaction and what's been happening in your region. So who would like to kick us off? Who's taking the lead? Mr. Nyquist, Commissioner Nyquist?
Can we start with introduction?
Oh, please, that's wonderful. Yes, please.
Private sector member of the Transportation Commission.
Wonderful.
And I served as mayor before, city councilor before as well.
Excellent. Wonderful to see you. And please do push the button for speak so we can pick it up too. I can hear you, but we'll have challenges in the back.
Hi. And now it's red. Oh, just leave it. Push it down. Leave it. Yeah, there you go. Okay, Barbara Bull, City Council for City of Corvallis. Annabelle Jaramillo, Commissioner, Benton County.
I'm John Hustis, ODOT, Area 4 Manager. I've been on the job about 4 months now.
John's doing great. Roger Nyquist, I'm Chair of the Lynn County Board of Commissioners, and this year I'm Chair of the ACT.
Tara Campy, Oregon Cascades West Council of Government Staff for the ACT.
So,
before you start, can I just say one thing, particularly since we have a representative from Corvallis here? I just want to say what a great city Corvallis is and what an outstanding university.
Go Beavs.
You said that to me at the last meeting.
I did.
So welcome. I'm delighted you're here.
We know that's just a game.
not bad at baseball either. We're there in Corvallis. Well, welcome to Lynn County. It's great to have you here. I'll just take a couple of minutes and kind of give you a very brief state of the county, if you will. In Lynn County, things are really good. I don't know in my lifetime, and I've lived here my whole life, that we've seen an unemployment rate below 4%. The job opportunities for young people and the opportunity for entrepreneurs to grow their businesses that we're experiencing now. The challenges we face are challenges that I guess one would dream of, and that is finding qualified employees for what we need to be as a growing workforce. And the other issue we have is manufacturers and ag interests getting their products to market through the transportation system. So things are good, and in particular, it's great that you're here meeting at this facility. This medical campus probably is about 3% of our local, of our countywide economic activity. It all started when Western University came here to form a medical college. Dr. Larry Mullins, the president of Samaritan Health, was looking for interns, and Western University out of the Pomona area was looking for places to place interns, and a conversation started, and they were able to site this facility in Lebanon because the land was here, the infrastructure was in, and the highway to get here from I-5 was in place. The infrastructure in Lebanon is a result of an urban renewal district. They invested those dollars wisely. In addition, in the late 90s, Lynn County and ODOT partnered on the expansion of Highway 34 from the freeway to Lebanon when ODOT was going to do an overlay, and the county came up with $2.5 million to widen that road. In today's dollars, you never could widen 11 miles for that kind of money, but we have a long history of partnering with your agency, and it's been very beneficial to the citizens of Lynn County, and we think to the state as well. So at this point, we've got a slide presentation, a PowerPoint. I don't do those very well. I can't stay on message, so I'm going to turn that over to Tara.
Thank you. Again, I'm Tara Campy, staff to the ACT with Cascades West. Council of Governments, and excited to give you an overview of what the Act has been working on in the past couple of years, and overview of our region a bit as well. As you know, we convene on transportation topics of regional significance. We correspond to Region 2, Area 4, and we've been working to streamline our meeting calendar over the past couple of years. So we typically meet every other month and bring ODOT topics as well as regional topics from other agencies to the commission for action items or for discussion as decided on by the executive committee. We have representation from all incorporated cities in the Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln County footprint. We work every year to ensure that our recruitment is comprehensive so that jurisdictions are informed of the opportunity to have representation on the Act, and then are able to participate either by teleconference from our Toledo office or in person in our Albany office, as well as the Siletz tribe and the all port districts as well in the footprint of Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties are invited to have membership. We have 2 private sector members per county, including Bill Bain, who's here with us today, and of course the ODOT area manager. There's a map of our footprint. Pretty much every jurisdiction on this map is represented at the table in the Act in an active way in some capacity. The executive committee includes 1 county commissioner from each of the 3 counties, the ODOT area manager, and then an additional representative from each county. Commissioner Nyquist's term will be ending in December, and Commissioner Jaramillo will be the chair for 2019. Additionally, we have a technical advisory committee that convenes. They have a quarterly standing meeting, and then they convene as needed for work items and assignments from the executive committee and things that come down the pipeline needing approval and technical work. The membership does not necessarily need to be elected officials. Most of the Act representation is jurisdictional staff, public works staff, et cetera. We coordinate actively with the Corvallis and Albany area MPOs, which are also staffed by the Council of Governments, and their policy and technical advisory committees have a lot of overlapping work items and staff who are able to coordinate and leverage the collaborative work that's happening. We work closely to comply with public meetings laws, accessibility, and we have meeting information available by email marketing and distributed widely to stakeholders and interested parties, in addition to our members and participating jurisdictions, as well as public comment availability on each meeting agenda. This year, we were able to convene to prioritize 2 Oregon Department of Aviation critical Oregon Airport relief grants for the City of Albany, a taxiway connector realignment, and City of Newport, pre-designed for storm pipe rehab. And we just convened this morning on our next cycle of ODA grant approvals, or rather grant evaluations going forward. And we have representation from the Technical Advisory Committee that reports to the statewide Aviation Review Committee. Typically, that role in the past few years has been filled by City of Albany, and this year it will be filled by a representative from City of Newport. We've been obviously working actively for the past year plus on interpreting and following House Bill 2017 outcomes as they relate to our geographic area and the member jurisdictions within the Act. We're very excited as 2019 approaches to see the outcome of the intermodal Mid-Valley project siting decision. We have been following the Lynn Economic Development Group's application for the International Paper Mill property in Millersburg, and that recommendation for that site has been included in the Albany Area Regional Transportation Plan that was adopted in May. So we've got a lot of great local momentum around that project. road projects in our area. This was discussed a little bit over lunch. Highway 34 barrier and intersection safety improvement project that's come online, rumble strips and a center median within the past year, really helping reduce what was a dangerous corridor for fatal and serious accidents.
So if I might jump in here, I'm off script, but I think it was 2015, over the course of that year, we lost 6 lives due to crossover head-on crashes. And the timing was such that you had a bill working through the legislature to deal with the median there on I-5. Senator Beyer and his aide were aware of this situation and jumped in and helped, I think, with a $3 million, I'm calling it an earmark, but it wasn't. Anyway, we knew where it was dedicated to go. And the counties jumped in with about $1 million to help with that. And there may have been one, I just don't know that we've had a fatality since that work has been done. And we're grateful for the partnership and helping to improve the safety of the system.
I think added to that too, I think it's the barrier has had a calming effect on traffic as well. It's people, I find they don't drive as fast.
We've got safety upgrades coming as well for Highway 20 between Albany and Corvallis, Highway 99 in Halsey, which also has some safe routes to school applications attached to it that are still in the works. And then the Van Buren Bridge replacement in Corvallis is also very high on the list of local interest and excitement moving forward. We talked a little bit about this earlier today as well. Huge accomplishment in our region is the Pioneer Mountain Eddyville project completion about a year ago at this point. The slide says eliminates 5 minutes of travel time, but really it feels like a lot more than that. It's probably more than that, and the safety improvements and the freight capacity that this improvement has allowed has been a game changer.
We want to thank you again for sticking with this project. It wasn't for the faint of heart. Thank you.
This is just a brief overview of some of the transportation modes in our region. Even though we don't have passenger service, we have a lot of airports in our neck of the woods. Corvallis Municipal being the largest. Port of Toledo was a recipient of Connect Oregon 6, $2 million for an environmental work building that was the final phase of its boatyard expansion that allows it to be a leader in the region on vessel maintenance and painting. So it services vessels from really all over the West Coast. We also have the Port of Alsea and, of course, the Port of Newport, home to NOAA's Marine Operations Pacific Fleet in our ACT area. We have 6 rail lines, and the primary products are recycled paper, wood chips, ag, petroleum products. Passenger rail, Amtrak, and Cascades Point Service use the Albany Intermodal Station. It's really a hub for the region, also served by Albany Transit, Greyhound, Bolt Bus, and there's a current pilot project providing Amtrak service connections from Corvallis to the Intermodal Center in Albany. Coast Valley Express, Albany Transit, Corvallis Transit are 3 of the leading programs in our area. Corvallis also has a night owl service during the academic year that provides PM service for the campus community and others. The Lynn Shuttle, Lincoln County Transit, Lynn Benton Loop. Lynn Benton Loop is an area where a service for which there's a lot of current planning going on around the State Transportation Improvement Fund intercommunity transportation funding opportunities. So the system is ripe for enhancements in its service, better coordination with the transit service on both ends. So it's a connector service between Albany and Corvallis, which is vital for students of Lynn Benton Community College, Oregon State University, as well as employees. So the governing board of the Loop service is working on service enhancement analysis now to be ready to be competitive for intercity transportation dollars to enhance that service that is so vital but hasn't been expanded for many years. We have robust transportation options programs in the area. We're a partner in Valley Van Pool, which has over 40 commuter van pool routes serving all up and down the I-5 corridor between Eugene and Portland. Pedal Corvallis Bike Share has 10 stations and 50 bikes. And then the Cascades West Ride Line Non-Emergency Medical Transportation Program for Medicaid clients throughout the 3-county region provides an average of 17,000 rides per month. And that's it. They're very busy. Their phones never stopped ringing at the emergency transportation program.
If I might add, Tara, a little bit also, in Benton County, we've already established our Special Transit Advisory Committee to take advantage of the transit dollars that will be coming our way, and they're planning and looking at all possibilities there. So we're really excited about that as well. And I did want to mention that the work on Van Buren Bridge is really going to be helpful, because not only is it going to be helpful for commerce, but you ought to see the pileup of traffic at 3 p.m. trying to get out of town on daily over that bridge. Huh?
When was that built?
It has historical status.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So a little while ago.
Yeah, a while. So that's the challenge
Yeah.
with trying to get a new design.
Okay.
So we work very well together. We do things by consensus. Even when we forget, it's by consensus. We get back to that. And as we talked a bit during lunch, it is a bit of just that sitting down at the table and talking about things and making priorities is at times a bit of a magical experience. People from different walks of life who wouldn't agree on anything else in life. When you're sitting down and talking about prioritizing transportation dollars, it works. It works, at least for us. And I would say it works, in my experience, at the regional level very well as well, with the Lane Act and the group to the north of us. And when we get together and we work through things, and at the end of that, the priorities that have been established are, I think, the ones that the taxpayers would have us fund and do. I guess a concern and maybe a missing component of that is that we all are affected by the congestion in the Portland metro area. It's a part of all of our economy and part of everybody's transportation system. I had a meeting yesterday morning downtown Portland scheduled at 8 o'clock. I used to leave an hour and 10 minutes would get me there, in there easy. I left it just shortly after 6, 10 after 6, and things are going just fine. And it's about 7 o'clock, and I get to Wilsonville, and I have a navigator. I use Waze, and it says, start making noise. Time change, delay. It'll be an hour and 11 minutes to go 17 miles. And that's just how it is. There was no wreck. There was no, and so I was a bit late, and so that was just me yesterday losing an extra half hour. But for the residents here and everywhere who engage that system, not to mention our attempts to move freight through the system, are difficult. So if we were expand what we do at the local and the regional level to do something statewide, I think that, and maybe you already know this, but the level of support you would have from across the state to improve that situation in Portland might surprise you.
Many of you seated at the table were part of the governor's visioning panel work, and we heard from across the state that the congestion issues in the Portland metropolitan area were causing an economic disadvantage to the state as a whole. It does feel slightly lonely on occasion when we start talking about things like congestion pricing and tolling. So we will need you, because that is a tool Whether it is the tool that we move forward with or not, it is something that we are going to be looking at, both from a legislative directive, but also as making sure that our toolbox has more than just a flashlight and a screwdriver. So I will be needing your assistance in terms of walking through that, because how we do it is critical to the success. It's the what makes sense. I mean, it's something that is used in a lot of other states. Again, whether it makes sense in Oregon or not, that's to be, for a future date. We're looking at it. But it'll be other parts of the state that'll help to inform that conversation as well, in being able to tell the story of what it means to the state's overall economy. So you're not off the hook yet.
You had me yesterday. I couldn't have paid whatever it was fast enough, so.
I was coming in from Portland down to Eugene, and I living in Bend, we don't have that kind of congestion, and you just, I mean, it's, I know,
Gosh,
sorry.
just slap me and Bob.
So, I just was thinking about, can you?
It's great over there.
It is, and so what I've decided to do is move the Capitol. No, I said, but you're right. I mean, talk about quality of life. That is, I mean, that's time away from family. That's time away from.
Moving the capital, one of these stiff amendments?
Yes, I am going. Well, it's centrally located in the state was my point, but really. So we'll work on that, Roger, another day, apparently.
Great, thank you. And our solution to the freight side of that and the local economy, or the regional economy, if you will, is that reload facility that we hope to be successful with in Millersburg. And we won't talk with you anymore about that right now, but I think your staff has done a great job in walking through those processes, and they're asking all the right questions, and we're eager to get to a decision point on that. And so with that, you've charged us with 3 questions.
And we can take them as they were. Are we going to put, sure, yeah, that'd be great. But really, it's part of it's a tee off from the lunch discussion,
Okay.
too. Thank you, Jackie.
Right, and so, I mean, other members can jump in here, but I would say, to question 1, what's the appropriate and effective role for the ACTS? Giving the funding and the expectations, we're getting a lot right. I mean, getting to consensus, and if anything, as I said, I would maybe take another step and have a statewide conference, if you will.
Okay.
I want to compare it to Connect Oregon, but I don't, because that's been a bit crazy at times. And I don't think that you would see that, but again, that commitment from leaders all over the state to address your Portland metro congestion issues might be important.
Okay.
Others on what we're doing at the ACT? And
Looking at number 2, looking at investment in the transportation system, I think it's really going to be important once our advisory committees are in place, where they can begin talking with one another on how to begin to alleviate that process, because I think that's going to be significant. It's a major portion of our workforce in Corvallis, for example, comes from Lynn County. So that conversation has to be collaborative, and I'm hoping that we can get there. We don't want to start throwing darts at each other, but I think that conversation early on is good. And then
Quick question, do you have the capacity to be able to be doing the work? And as you went through the process and you set up the committee, and did you find that was it another capacity overload piece, or did you find that
actually working with Cascade West, I think we're getting there. I haven't really had questions on, how much more capacity we need, but I think at least we've started the process. Okay. And I'm sure we'll be informing you of how we're doing in that in terms of moving forward. I don't know what's happening with Lynn County.
So in the way of transit in our area, I can't speak to Lincoln County, but the things that work well, it's clear that we can use the resources for more capacity, is the city of Corvallis runs a very robust transit system. The Lynn-Benton Loop works well, and it's a cooperative effort of both public and private sector. And then the medical brokerage rides, we get the participation level that warrant their
Right.
existence, and that all seems to work well. But I'm concerned that we're not ready for the money. That you only
Yeah.
build something out or start something once. You only recreate
That's
something one time, and however we roll this out, 10 or 15 years from now, that will still be the standard. And at the local level, I just want to make sure we've thought it through and we're doing what makes sense. And time seems to be creeping up on us, and my local jurisdictions in Lynn County, I don't know they're ready for the money today. But we will continue to work through that, and we will continue to have a conversation with your staff as things play out.
Well, and John in his 4 months on the job, we want, your success is our success. And we have a responsibility to the legislature and to the state of Oregon to make sure that this rolls out well. And so if there is a capacity gap or some sort of need that you have, please let us know, because we want to make sure that communities don't feel overwhelmed, but they feel ready. And that's why it's a two-phased approach too, but definitely let us know if there's a challenge there.
If I can jump in for a minute.
Please.
The Corvallis folks and the Newport folks of Lincoln County have joined together in a Coast to Valley Express, and that seems to work very well for the staff going to OSU, Hatfield Marine Science Center, and vice versa, people traveling back and forth. And I think that can only improve over time. Yep.
I was going to say, with the STIF money that's available, I think that there's a lot of communities that are feeling the same anxiety that you're experiencing as far as what do we put in place, because it is our future. And so I know that there's been encouragement to maybe take your first spot of funding instead of just enhancing what you have. Put a plan together, go out and do a plan. And so for our area in Southern Oregon, we had just received money through property tax increase in the last couple of years, and actually we're able to enhance what we would have done with the STIF money. We are in the middle of a master planning and decided not to go out this first round, but wait until March and then the May pot of money. So sometimes it's not what a transit system wants to hear when the commission says, you know, wait, you need to wait and look at this a little bit further. Causes them a little anxiety because they want to just put the service out there. But you're right, we have to plan for the future. So I hope that's helpful.
So, Commissioner, are you in a position then where it's a use it or lose it?
No,
Okay.
it is not.
That helps.
So you actually, if you don't use it this 2 years, that the biennium that it's for, it'll carry over into the next biennium.
That's what I heard.
Great, that's great news, thank you.
And that makes good sense. I think moving deliberately into it and following up, making sure that it's something that will exist for years.
Ms. Jaramillo, when you say that a lot of your workforce in the Corvallis area comes from Lane County, has there ever been an assessment of whether it's single occupancy vehicle, or are they using any kind of a transit, or?
I can't answer that. I suspect that the majority of it is using their own vehicles primarily, because our transit system, I don't think, is built up to the point of being able to do that. Roger, do you have any
Right,
sense of
the
that?
Lynn Benton Loop is
about the only thing.
what they would use is mostly occupied by students, some
Right.
HB employees, but very little transit. In the way of travel sheds, I'm just rounding numbers here, but I'm generally got it right. In all of our communities, about half the people who live in our community work in our community. Half the people are leaving our community to go to another community. And half our workforces are coming from somewhere else.
Right.
So there's a bigger land use component to all of this as well that I won't put us in the ditch on today.
Well, and the land use component also drives part of the transportation.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Component, so, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's why we touched on it at lunch too. It's something that definitely is coming up.
So to question 3, the prioritization, I think that the agency gets it right, and they're in the order mostly that you have them: preservation, safety, and congestion. It just makes sense that you spend a dime now preserving what you have versus $1 later. We've found now I don't know what the acronym of ARTS means, but the ARTS program to be very user-friendly and helpful. Things happen fairly quickly. I mean, it's as simple as the road turns sharply and there's a tree and people are hitting that tree and dying, and collectively we cut the tree down. And without that ARTS program addressing that, I don't know that it would happen in quite that way. So it's a great program, and to the conversation today, if anything, you just increase the funding of that somehow, which is easy for me to say. We mostly, the ACT is involved in modernization, right? I mean, we have STIP projects, we have new stuff, but I wouldn't want the commission to take that as meaning that we place new projects and relief of congestion over those just basic fundamentals that
That's right.
your agency does every day.
Okay. Do we have other questions or comments? So for your biennial report, is there anything in there that's you want to note, or changes that you want to draw to our attention? Okay.
No, things are working. We've got a good set of rules and protocols we follow. We're interacting well with your agency and
Great.
feel good about things.
Great.
Thank you for coming to Lynn County, and thank you for the opportunity
Well,
today.
thank you for hosting us, and we do need to approve your biennial report.
Oh,
So
okay.
before you scurry off here, would someone like to
Sure.
make a motion?
Yeah, I move approval of the Cascade West Area Committee on Transportation Biennial Plan.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us. Wonderful to be here. It's a beautiful facility. Okay, next, let's see. We'll have an update on the current efforts to improve work zone safety. So Mr. Harvey and Mr. Cooley, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair Boehne and Commissioners. My name is Steve Cooley. I'm ODOT's Chief Engineer, and with me is...
excuse me, I got some voice challenges this morning. I'm Brody Harvey, Project Manager with Knife River.
Okay, great.
Okay, and we're here today to give the Commission an update on ODOT's efforts related to improving work zone safety, our pilot projects, and some of the construction that happened last season.
Wonderful.
I think I need that clicker. Okay, so first I wanted to give you a little background on some of the work that has gone on related to work zone safety. The Work Zone Executive Strategy Committee was formed in 2013 with the purpose of improving safety in the work zones, not only for the workers but the traveling public. The committee is chaired by Director Garrett and has a broad list of participants which include AAA, Association of General Contractors, ODOT, Oregon State Police, Oregon State University, and the Oregon Trucking Association. This team brings to the table the stakeholders necessary to collaborate and work this issue. The committee has focused their efforts in 4 areas or task forces. Separation mobility focuses on the balance between safety and mobility. This is where the pilot projects fall under this task force, and as well as the Mobility Advisory Committee, which provides input on our construction projects' transportation management plans. Engineering and enhancements focuses on standards, best practices, research, and new technology, and keeps us on the cutting edge. The law enforcement, it's always looking for ways to leverage our law enforcement to provide strong presence on our projects, and also improving communication between ODOT and Oregon State Police during our design and construction. And then just in general communications, the construction season messaging, the work zone safety awareness, looking at ways to connect with the public through diverse media options, Pandora, TV, Facebook, and so on. And some of the accomplishments that this group has been able to deliver on is they developed the work zone guiding principle. And I think you have a copy of that in your packet, along with the highway directive. That this directive really embeds the guiding principle into our project delivery process at all of the milestones. And it asks the teams to be using a work zone decision tree, which they'll use to identify different methods to construct the project, and then document our overall transportation management, or our efforts in a transportation management plan, which follows the project throughout the whole project. We've also developed a work zone safety communication plan. I think you have a copy of that in your packet as well for 2018. And then there's been several work zone research projects using Oregon State University, some of which are safe reductions in freeway interstate speeds, stepping that down from 65 all the way down to 35 miles an hour, work intrusion, alert technologies, additional lighting for traffic control and speed reductions, and also smart work zones, which manages the end of that queue with technology to give messages to the public of slow traffic or stop traffic ahead. And then this last summer, we had a pilot on blue lights on contractor paving machines. There was a couple of contractors that used those, and Oregon State went out and has done some speed studies, and that report is going to be out next month. And then, of course, the work zone pilots. So I'd now like to briefly discuss a case study that I think was the catalyst that moved us into the pilot projects. In the summer of 2017, there was a tragic fatality of a Knife River employee, Ronald Davis, on the Willamette River Boone Bridge to Woodburn project. After the accident, ODOT worked with Knife River to make any adjustments we could with the traffic control to get them back to work and complete the project. We did make some modifications, and after we completed the project, I was then asked by the Work Zone Executive Committee to develop a case study with Knife River, since we did look at some alternate methods before we got back to work. We were going to use those. We had real actual project data to look at a couple of alternate methods. If we were going to do the project over again, what would it cost out, or what would the durations be? So the I-5 Willamette River Bridge to Woodburn project was a typical grind and inlay type paving job, 3 lanes in each direction on I-5. It took 21 weeks to complete. It had various ramp and minor bridge work on it, but the project used the standard night work, nighttime lane closures, and then reopen them during the day. But this only really allows 5.5 hours of actual paving. By the time you take the lane, do the grind, clean up, and then actually start paving, you got to tear down and open it back up. So that's why it took the 21 weeks. So this table here, I know there's a lot on there, but I'm only just going to kind of touch on the project duration and lane restrictions. But the as-built over there was the 21 weeks, nighttime lane closures, but daytime it was open. Now, if we did a concrete barrier, you can see that there was an increase in cost of $668,000. That's a net difference between the traffic control that we wouldn't have used doing the as-built and adding in the cost of the barrier and the movement, and then the net was still an increase of that amount. But it would take 9 weeks, and there would be 24-hour lane closures. Basically, there would be 1 lane reduction in one direction while we were building, like northbound, southbound would be open, then we would flop. So there would be 9 weeks of that, so that would be longer backups. The zipper barrier option is a little more flexible. It gives us 11 weeks, but 9 of those weeks, because of the zipper barrier, we can kind of zip it out, do some work, and then move it back. So we would do a lot of the work within the nighttime work closure. But then when we got down to mainline paving, they would move the barrier out and pave northbound for 1 week. You know, they'd move the barrier twice, but they would complete all of northbound in 1 week and then move over to the other side. So the comparison here would be the 2 weeks to the 9 weeks of actual daytime backups. And then the last was total closure, assuming that we had alternate routes available. You know, and this was really for comparison purposes, but we could do the project, all the paving in 1.5 weeks. So when we presented that to the Work Zone Executive Committee, that kind of was like, wow, now we can start getting, maybe if we accelerated the construction, we could start getting these durations down into, manageable timeframes to where, people could start planning around a 1 week or a weekend or what have you. So that gave us the go-ahead to look at some of our big paving jobs in the next couple years to look at these alternate methods. So on this map, you can see some dots on there, and those are our 11 project locations. And a selection team was formed, basically using our mobility committee, which is the freight industry, and plus contractors, ODOT and Oregon State Police, and we looked at those projects and came up with 11 jobs to try in the next couple of years. And there's a nice mixture of options here of concrete barrier, zipper barrier, using detours, directional closures, crossovers, which we'll show one of those here in a little bit. A mobile barrier truck. There was a particular scope in there where a mobile barrier truck is a tractor trailer, and the trailer of that semi has a safety shape on the traffic side, and then the workers would be on the other side. And it's really designed for smaller, shorter work areas like patching concrete pavement, which one of the projects, that's what the scope is. And then some of them have daytime work, where a lot of times, because of a width issue for freight, the oversized loads, especially on the east side of the mountains, the traffic volumes are pretty low, but the width restriction moves us into all night paving. So we want to be creative in figuring out how can we get to more daytime paving with those low volumes and work around the oversized loads because it's a lot safer in the day. In all of these methods, when the project teams are evaluating these options, they're going to be looking at worker safety, traveling public safety, and also mobility impacts. And it's going to have to be a balance when they move forward with a proposal. And of course, with looking at the shorter duration, we'll put up with a little bigger impact, shorter duration, and it'll have a less of an impact to the traveling public. They're going to have a lot of public outreach required so they can start planning and knowing when these weekend closures or what ramp closures and things would occur. This last summer we constructed 2 of our projects, which we're going to go into, and then next summer we'll have 6 other ones that we'll be looking at. And here is one of them, the Beltline projects. That's number 6 on your list of projects. It's the common name is the Beltline Project. Knife River was the contractor, and they proposed a deviation in our traffic control with some weekend closures, and I'll hand it off to Brody to walk through that.
Thank you, Steve. So we were awarded a $7 million contract to rebuild about 7.5 miles of Beltline from Coburg Road to Roosevelt Boulevard in Eugene. The job was bid using nightly lane closures to complete all the work. And it called for the placement of about 60,000 tons of new asphalt paving. But the job was really more than just a mill and inlay of the wearing course. There were several challenging sections on the project that called for full depth replacement of the asphalt, which meant 3 to 4 lifts of new asphalt to be placed in a night work zone closure of 8 hours, which would have been very challenging. There was over a month worth of bridge work on the project. All the bridges along this section of highway needed new waterproofing membranes. Knife River, for the first time, we self-performed that bridge membrane work, because we wanted to win the job, and we felt like that would provide us an opportunity to keep costs down, but also because the schedule was so tight for the project that we wanted to control that work. There was a unique scenario on this job where we had the same team that finished out the I-5 Woodburn project working with the same ODOT project team on the Beltline. Those 2 teams both came from outside their normal area to build that I-5 Woodburn project in 2017. And I also got to work with Steve Cooley on that case study that he mentioned. So we had some momentum going into this Beltline project. Once we received notice to intent of award, we immediately approached the project team about partnering on a pilot safety project for the work on Beltline, with the idea that we would complete some portion of the project with complete separation between workers and traffic. And we very quickly came up with a plan for 5 weekend closures that would allow us to complete about half the project with workers separated from traffic by a barrier. We didn't have much time. We started work on the project soon after and spent the next 6 weeks installing bridge membranes throughout the project and re-engineering the traffic control plans for the crossovers, developing new detour plans, planning every last detail for the weekend work, and simultaneously, ODOT began working on their public messaging with the dates set for the 5 weekend closures. So we had a hard deadline that we had to meet to be ready for these weekend closures, and I'm happy to say that we were ready for the first closure. So we're gonna watch a video. This is a video of the 5th weekend closure. The work is occurring westbound between River Road and Northwest Expressway. You can see traffic down to 1 lane in each direction in the eastbound side of Beltline, delineated with traffic barrels. And at this stage of the project, the grinding is complete and we're placing new asphalt pavement. In order to complete all of the work within this weekend closure, which was around 6,000 tons of asphalt, that required an increase in resources on our part. So for this closure, we had 3 grinding machines with 3 dedicated crews, and all 3 of those machines started grinding at the same time Friday night at the start of this closure. We had 3 separate Knife River paving crews that worked in this closure. They paved continuously for almost 36 hours. We dispatched almost 50 trucks with different start times staggered throughout the weekend. We had a dedicated traffic control team, on-site grading crew, a permanent striping crew, and a permanent signage crew that worked within this closure. All the work occurred between 9 p.m. Friday and 5 a.m. Monday, and we were open on time or early for every one of those 5 closures for people to go back to work on Monday. And that's on account of the large planning effort that went into it. We had every hour of the weekend closure planned with the goal of not wasting a single minute of those weekend closures. We also had contingency plans in place for every possible problem, including backup asphalt plants, additional on-call trucks, if you can believe there's more trucks out there, spare paving equipment, and the list goes on. We learned a lot from this experience. I have a lot of personal satisfaction from having been involved in this project. We estimate that we reduced the overall duration of the project by about 25 shifts because of the use of the weekend closures. And from our perspective, it was a lot safer to have our crews working behind a concrete barrier than within a lane closure with traffic running right by us. We were also able to achieve higher quality because we were able to optimize the location of our paving joints. Typically, when we're doing paving in a lane closure, we'll have transverse joints about every mile where we just have to stop paving for the night. But in the weekend closures on Beltline, we were able to terminate all of our joints at bridge ends or at the extent of the project. A new development, I would say, for a pavement preservation project that we're able to do is install the permanent thermoplastic striping during the weekend on the last day of the closure, not long after the paving was complete. Typically, for the nightly closure paving work that we do on the interstate, we have to bring out our striping subcontractor at the very end of the shift, at the end of every shift, to put back down temporary paint so that the lane lines are in place for the traveling public in the morning. So we didn't have to do that for half the project, which was great. In terms of traffic impacts, we didn't observe any traffic backups during the weekend closures, and I can confidently say that we reduced overall impact to traffic because of the use of the weekend closures. Moving forward, myself, our team will be working with Steve and the ODOT project team to memorialize all the lessons we learned on the project so that we can apply those hopefully to projects moving forward. And I'd also say that I'm personally looking forward to the next opportunity to partner with ODOT on another challenging highway project.
So from obviously our number one priority is safety, and I'm grateful that we're having this conversation. But from the worker who's doing the work on the ground that evening or that day, what does it mean to them to have a concrete barrier and separated from traffic, as opposed to how we operate in most of our work zones today?
I mean, every one of them would tell you that they would much rather work behind a barrier. And I can say anecdotally, just from being out there on those weekends, you see a lot more smiles on people's faces working out there when they're behind a barrier. People are just a little less on edge than when they're working in a lane closure.
And same with our inspectors. They're a lot, they felt a lot safer and were able to focus on their task at hand instead of, looking over their shoulder.
Right.
And I think you can see some of the results and the quality that we achieved on the project as well. It's a very smooth ride.
Well, and so I'm trying to get to that return too. So the worker themselves feeling, part of the team who isn't literally over both shoulders, trying to, monitor the work and monitor activity that is outside their control. So it'd be nice if we could quantify the return of what that means. But I think just in making sure that we don't lose another individual, that would be plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is the Jersey barrier the main barrier that we're utilizing, the main safety measure that we're using?
Yes, so there on Beltline, there is precast barrier throughout half the project alignment, and it's sitting on top of the existing asphalt. So to create our crossovers, we moved the barrier and created a hole, and then crossed traffic over through that hole, and then left the rest of the barrier in place. It's already there, and that created the barrier between our crews and traffic.
How many lives have we lost where there's, and I'm not sure who would know, but I'm just asking, but how many lives have we lost where a car or a truck has gone beyond or over these Jersey barriers?
That I couldn't answer off the top of my head, but breaching over. It depends on a lot of different factors, but I'm sure we can look that up.
So when we're losing lives or we're undergoing injuries, what is the barrier that is causing that? I would assume it's not a Jersey barrier because that's a very heavy piece of concrete.
When they breach into the work zone, is that what?
Yeah.
It's barrels.
Barrels and cones?
Yeah.
And is it typically on the installation of cones, or have there been fatalities and injuries with the installation of cones, or is it while people are actually, like raking or, working on the actual infrastructure?
I don't have the exact numbers, but I do remember that the setup and tear down oftentimes are the most critical points.
I'll second that.
So, perfect, because there was a gentleman who emailed me when I came on the commission in 2015 who was promoting this this technology of a system where it does not require any human labor to install or remove the cones or pretty much the cones in the safety zones. And so I'm curious as to when you're installing cones, are you using human labor or are you using this new technology that's been engineered on the side of these trucks that's just plopping out cones as it goes down the highway and then picking them back up when project's over?
We have 3 barrel movers is what the trade name is called, but it's an arm on the front of a pickup truck with rollers, and the barrels can be on the shoulder, and they shove the barrel out into the lane. But we still, even with those, we still end up having to have some manpower out there to adjust them. But it is an improvement to just a person out there moving every barrel.
Got it. Okay.
Cone dropping, I've seen the trucks where you don't have a physical presence of someone dropping the cones either. Is that what you're?
Well, because historically, typically there's a guy hanging on the back and he's just dropping them and the truck's going and he's pulling and dropping. But if there's other ways where we could do it to minimize the risk of somebody out there actually having themselves exposed on a high-moving corridor, then obviously it minimizes our risk of injury or potential fatality. I was just curious about that. And then one other thing, you had indicated, so when we're removing asphalt, and you're grinding it, are you going back down to the dirt and the backfill pack rocked, or are you going down to the previous lift?
We're going down we're just taking the wearing course off typically. There were some sections on the Beltline project where there were some full depth repair areas that we dug it out with an excavator and we went clear down to rock.
And so each lift is how many inches?
It varies. On Beltline, it was 2 inches was the wearing course.
2 inches. And then
2
what
is
is
common.
what is our state spec?
Usually
Is
it's
it
2-inch lifts.
That's it?
No, you mean the overall
Like-
thickness?
Yeah, exactly.
It depends on the section. They design it for specific
Got it.
areas depending on the vehicles and so on.
Okay.
But,
All right.
It's 6 to 8 inches. I mean, it's.
Okay.
Beltline, the full depth areas were 11 inches of asphalt.
11
on
wow.
inches, yeah.
Jeez. Okay.
Just depends,
Just curious. Thanks.
yeah.
My question is, what percentage of freight movement is happening at night versus during the day? Do you happen to know that?
I know someone does, but I don't
Well,
have that
and the
inf-
reason I
don't
was
have
asking,
that.
wondering was that if, in that one scenario on slide 6 where you were showing nighttime pavement versus the other alternatives, and I guess my question would be, if you're doing nighttime paving and there's more freight movement at night or less, which would impede being able to move goods and services, or goods, is one. I'm looking at the economic impact versus
Right.
to
There is a
the
lot during
project.
I think there is a lot during the day, obviously, so. That's kind of goes into that balance that we're looking at of what is the impact, and can we set up something where we can accelerate the construction and have that window to where they can plan around maybe a shorter duration versus, your 21 weeks worth of construction. And there are other things that we can do related to setting up those cones as well. I think on the I-5 job that we were talking about, we did rolling slowdowns so that we held back the traffic while they were putting them out and taking them back, so there wasn't anybody around them at that time. So there's other things besides just the technology to place them and remove them. But I have a few more slides, unless you have more questions.
Sorry, I was diving into your materials. I was reading
Okay.
where those specific projects, but please
right.
go right ahead.
Okay, the next project was I-84 Poverty Flats to Meacham job that was built this last summer, and that's between Pendleton and LeGrand. That job is a diamond grind on the concrete pavement to repair rutting, and the scope of the job was there's a width restriction, so most of that work was going to be done at night. And then the contractor, once the contractor was let, the contractor came back and went to our Mobility Advisory Committee and proposed a solution to accommodate the oversized loads during the day so they could do the daytime paving. And their solution, you can see in the messages there, is they would be notified there's a pull-out area behind the person holding the camera. There's a chain-up area on that highway so they could pull over, loads 15 feet and wider, wait here, and then contact the number on the permit. The contractor had the phone number someone was available 24/7 during this time. They would move the cones to allow for the wider loads to go through so they wouldn't be hit. And then here's a picture of a couple of the loads going through. If you looked at the picture on the left, on the right-hand side of the cones is the oversized load. The left-hand side is the contractor's work area, and you can see the cones shifted over into their area. So they would allow the vehicles to come through. The right-hand picture is also similar, it's just a different load. And this worked very well. It was in place for 2 to 3 weeks, and they had at least one per day come through, and there was no issues. So I think this is a good example of kind of what we're talking about, being innovative and, being more, the daytime paving or work is safer, but we still allowed for the freight to get through. And so it was a good solution.
Noted, one of the challenges is sometimes we make decisions based on the outside, which is for an oversized load, which you just noted that if we had one a day, or even if it's 5 a day, if you look at the other daily traffic, it's significantly more that's happening of your traveling public.
Right.
How are we making sure that we can accommodate for that, but yet have the closures that are necessary to be able to have the throughput that builds added capacity for the work zone and has an alternative for the need to get through with an oversized load, which is kind of doesn't happen as often as you would maybe
Right.
some would expect. So I'm happy to see that happening.
Yeah. Then next steps. So we are planning on working with our partners, our industry, trucking and the general contractors, and learning as much as we can with these pilot projects over the next couple of years, develop some best practices and performance requirements, as I mentioned, as we live with some of those shorter term impacts. We'll need to have on the other side the contractors to accelerate that work so we can minimize that impact there and speed up our construction. So develop some of those contracting requirements there. And we're working with our industry partners during staging meetings to learn about our different businesses and sharing information. And constructability reviews is a great tool for the project teams when they're looking at filling out their decision tree to get feedback from the contracting community. And I will say that this last couple of meetings that I went to, we were talking about work zone safety, and the contractors showed up in force and were really helpful. They shared great information about means and methods, more input. Usually they're sitting right next to their competitors, so they're a little, keep their cards a little close, but you guys were sharing some good ideas, and we had Oregon State Police there as well, and a couple of members from our mobility team. And it was a great sharing, so I'm hoping that's the new model for that review. Law enforcement's another area. We continue to work with our law enforcement to have that presence on the job. That's our best countermeasure right there, to reduce the speeds and make people alert through the work zone. There's no replacement of actual physical presence. And then from when we presented this case study back last December to today, I feel like there is some new energy here moving forward and trying to collaborate and improve work zone safety, and these pilots are going to help inform that discussion. And let me get to my last piece here. So we continue to work with our industry and maintain and establish and maintain that balance of safety and mobility. And my goal is, once we dial that balance in, that future projects, we won't call them pilots, they'll just be the way we do business. So
are we getting some return on, so we shortened the timeline, maybe this is more industry side, we're able to shorten the length of the overall project and add safety. I'm sure that there's an associated cost with some of this too, so is that equaling out to a wash, or should we expect to see in some of our bids additional costs associated with this, or is that something that we think will just be embedded within the bidding process? What should we be anticipating? And I would be hoping that, and it sounded like you alluded to this, that we'd be looking at existing projects of ways in which we can add additional worker safety in those projects too, or maybe not.
Well, I think we're going to be learning that as we do these pilots and try to measure what some of those are. And when we shorten the overall duration of the project, there is a savings, maybe not when we are paying our contractors, but overall to the general public for overall impacts to freight. There's a user cost. So if we're out there for 21 weeks or 1 week, I mean, that's an obvious night and day, but you see what I mean. If we reduce it, then we're not impacting the freight and mobility for those other days. So there is a savings that we can capture there.
I would also argue that you're going to increase capacity for industry by reducing some of the project durations if we do some of these alternate methods, and that should bring costs down as well.
Yeah.
In terms of the barriers or any of those other pieces, is there an associated cost that we should start factoring in, or is that already baked into our bidding process? So I guess it would depend on, maybe we can't answer that yet because we're not sure what's going to make the most sense, but
have that play out. But some of the crossovers, if we construct a crossover and it's permanent, so that it's there for the next time we pave, you have to spread that out. There's a savings there overall to picking that option. So I think we'll we'll learn as we're going here in these pilots.
Well, as you know, we've talked a lot about safety lately, and a lot of it is because of the tragedy that was experienced, and one is too many. So we are also working with OSP in whatever we can do to assist them on the enforcement side. And I'm not sure if you were in the room, but we also want to make sure that cities and counties are doing what they can too to make sure that their enforcement with their projects is to where it needs to be, to make sure that we have that part of the equation locked down. So, yes, thank you so much. Do we have other questions or comments? Okay, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Director Garrett, for putting this together and for your leadership on that. Okay. Now we have an action item, and this is a STIP amendment. Mr. Lynn.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. Mac Lind, soon to be active Transportation Section Manager again. I'm pulling a bit of duty from the last couple months as the Interim Highway Division Administrator, so Mr. Strickler is just coming on board. Mr. Reading, Region 3 Manager, would have typically handled this item, but given my history of our process, Chris asked me to go ahead and take this one on.
And I don't know why he's sitting back there. I mean, he should have really, anyway, so we'll give him a bad time about that.
Yeah, I was on vacation.
It is noted that he is sitting in the back.
Yeah. So bringing today a STIP amendment item to increase the funding for a project, and I believe this is at the request of Director Garrett, just given the size and scope of this request. I think the dollar amount alone probably warrants a bit of discussion. So just a little context, this is a project down in Commissioner Brown's neck of the woods, basically from the California border to Ashland. On I-5. So think about if you're driving back into the state, coming up and over the pass, that downhill stretch all the way down into the flats of Ashland. So a significant snow zone area for us, the highest traveled snow zone in the state, extremely important part of our I-5 connection north and south. So the project is really to improve the concrete surface of the road for 12 miles. So we're doing something called concrete diamond grinding. So if you've driven that stretch, you'll experience some rutting in the concrete. So as we grind down the high points of that, that gives a smoother ride and also takes away that feeling you have when you're driving your vehicle in and out of those ruts. We just completed our first one of these in the state in Eastern Oregon on I-84 between Pendleton and LeGrand. And we're envisioning we're going to get another 12 to 13 years of wearing surface out of that project, just given that it's a smooth surface without those ruts in the way. So we're hoping to extend the life of that concrete section on I-5 as well, down in the Siskiyous. So the project was scoped in 2013. So as we've had conversations with the commission the last few months around project cost increases, I always want to pin that of when did we start thinking about this project? So this was 2013 is when we scoped it. So we're 5 or 6 years out from when we initially started looking at one of these projects, in particular this one. We're not to construction yet. So we're not in that situation where we're asking you to approve additional funding to complete the project. We're in the design phase. We're getting ready to move towards construction in next spring. So we're really at a critical juncture of getting our engineering done, really nailing down the scope of the project before we get ready to go to construction. 4 main drivers are happening with this cost increase. One is price escalation. You all are familiar with that challenge we have right now with our bidding environment. Project costs are coming in higher for a variety of reasons. In particular, one of them that's driving the cost estimate for this project is that diamond grinding method I spoke to. We don't have a lot of experience with this in our state, and just recently with that project this summer in Eastern Oregon, we now have a better benchmark for what that cost is going to be based a different expectation from 2013 when we scoped it. The second piece is some scope changes, so both technical and substantive. There's 2 bridges that we're going to redo as part of this project. Those are originally planned to be completed in a different project, but due to the Siskiyous Welcome Center, an important project that you've heard about before, we needed to advance the bridge work so it didn't interfere with the construction of the Siskiyou Welcome Center. In addition, just the nature of those bridges is worse than we anticipated. as we got in and started doing our engineering work and our exploration, the bridge decks no longer can just afford a deck overlay. We're now replacing the decks. So a lot more work going on. And as we increase the depth of that new structure, given our new design standards, we're having to build up the road on either side of it. So with those increases, those changes to the project, that's driving the cost up. The other is, as we think about House Bill 2017 and the charge of delivering all of these projects, we're outsourcing a lot more. This is an example of a project where we're having to outsource the construction engineering and inspection part of the project. Not something we planned on initially when we scoped it, but that's also driving up the cost as we outsource that work. And then lastly, some significant safety improvements. This stretch of the road obviously gets a lot of incidents due to the snow. And what we've experienced is the guardrail. Our maintenance crews are up there constantly trying to repair that. We now have an updated guardrail standard for a taller guardrail. While not required with this project to go through and upgrade that, our Region 3 staff feel like that's the right answer. While we're there, while we've got the project in motion, traffic control in place, we should take advantage of that. I think that's about $700,000 of the increase. So all that to be said, it's just under a $9 million increase. It's a substantial cost, 12 miles worth of road, and we're really at a place of understanding what the conditions of the road are, as well as what the engineering requirements will be prior to us going to construction. So with that, it's a kind of a broad overview of what's going on with it.
Well done. The outsourcing, what does that look like? That will be something that we're going to need to be looking at in terms of a lot of the project delivery going forward. So in terms of its percentage or costs associated with this particular project, could you give a bit more on that, please?
Absolutely, Chair Boehne. So when we're scoping projects today, we have the luxury of assuming pretty much everything's going to be outsourced. So as we're scoping projects for the 21-24 STIP, we're assuming those projects are going to be outsourced. Rule of thumb is generally 30% more. To speak individually to this project, I don't have that detail in front of me, but that's part of the cost increase. For our older projects where we've had to pivot midstream, if you will, and make that shift from in-house services to outsourcing, there's no money for that, right? We have to make that decision and more than often than not come to you to approve that change. So we're ahead of it for future projects, the ones that are in the pipeline. We're having to deal with that shift, if you will.
So a lot of factors going into the increase on this one. So particular questions or comments, please go right ahead.
I understand the changes, but I feel like going forward, we're going to have to put more emphasis on the KPMs that we install for the department, especially as it relates to these projects. Just because, something like this, we think about all our needs, we think about all our challenges, all the things that we have to, that we're lagging on, and we're just, 9 million like that, and I just feel like there has to be something that's holding more individuals accountable in terms of, one, how things are being engineered and spec'd and scoped, and two, who our partners are that are actually on the ground doing the work. I don't even have really a true understanding of when you guys come up with this number, is it sitting down with the contractor? Are they open book? Are they saying this is what our margin is? We have no intel. They could be marking it up 30%. We have no idea, just profit. And we have no idea, it's too blind. And I think we have to figure out a way to get to a place where there's more transparency. And maybe it does need to go to an open book process when we're going through amendments like these so we can have a full, clean slate of understanding of truly where our costs are going. That's the only thing that concerns me right now, and I would assume that that's what creates a lot of concern from their external stakeholders as they're watching a lot of these amendments as they take place, because these are all public dollars. So I just think we have to start thinking about the priorities and the KPMs that we want to identify and measure going forward, not only just as it relates to how we spend resources, but also the staff that we have working on some of these major projects. Because it just leads me to start having curiosity about our other really big HB 2017 earmark projects. You know, because if something changes, again, we're in a hot economy, we have workforce shortages, material costs are going up, transportation costs are going up, everything's going up, and we need to probably start considering budgeting for contingencies so that when we go through these step process, we actually have that little wiggle in there.
And we have, you raise a great point, we have talked about budgeting with contingency, and so any comments on that?
Yeah, two things, Chair Boehne, Commissioner Simpson, especially to your point around performance measures. So one of the requirements out of House Bill 2017 is a tracking of on time and on budget. And part of our transparency and accountability website that'll launch at the beginning of the year is exactly getting to your point. What are we doing to measure our performance in these two areas? So that'll be launched in a public-facing website starting the first of the year, really setting the baseline for every project. And then how are we meeting that or hopefully exceeding that to measure on time and on budget. So to your first point, exactly. The second is we have gone through and looked at significant projects and tried to do a better job of putting that contingency factor in there where we've identified the risk. I would say it's not perfect yet. That's our first attempt at really trying to get a handle on this. This project, in my opinion, is not simply price escalation. There's a lot of stuff going on here, adding scope, redefining kind of what the work needs to be based on changing conditions or better understanding of the conditions. But yeah, all those factors are wrapping into the process. The other thing that's happening internally is there's an effort been underway, and I think Paul Mather, before he retired, was speaking to this, is what is our process in terms of how are we bringing you information on each project and projects that are significant in changes. We're calling it a stage gate approach. And that process is well underway, and I believe they're getting closer to the finish line of having a proposal, and that's something I envision we, the agency, will be sharing with you over the next couple of months of what is our process for when do we scope projects, when does that change, when does that scope or cost estimate change, and when are we engaging with you so we're not coming every month on the same project, which is not happening today, but sometimes it feels like it. But when are we coming at critical milestones prior to really starting to buy right-of-way is a clear indication for me that we should be pretty good with where we're at on the project and in front of you, giving you the choice to move forward or not. And certainly before we get ready to go to bid, that's a critical time for us to say, are we comfortable with the cost and the approach for this project? So with that.
It sounds like there's a difference between the original project that was scoped in 13 and the project that you're bringing to us today. There are some additions and decisions that are being asked. Do we want to add these components to it for safety reasons? Or so part of it is the escalating factors of outsourcing and a variety of other things, but the other is we're making a conscious choice or not.
Correct.
To change the scope in a way of a particular project. So if it were just clean slate project in 2013, project in almost 2019, would $9 million make sense? Probably not. But, and so from a public perception perspective, we want to be clear about what it is. So those nuances too, I think, are important for us to call out.
I was going to say, how often do you really look at the scope of work that are projects that are in the STIP? I mean, like you said, this was 2013. With the changes that are happening, how many other projects are there that are keyed up to be future projects that the scopes are totally wrong on them?
Yeah, Commissioner Brown, I think it's a great question. When I look at this project, and not knowing it intimately like our Region 3 staff do, but the first thing that strikes me is we scoped this in 2013, and this was one of the last projects slated for construction in that STIP cycle. It was scheduled for 2018, 2019 from the get-go. So it's that kind of tail end of the STIP. So to your question of how many are out there, that's a quarter of our work, if you will. Anytime we're building a STIP is out that far. The other thing that's going on is some of these take a long time to develop. And this one, you can see we've spent a considerable amount of time on the engineering side of it. So that tells me we've been working on that for 3 years plus, starting from 2015, trying to understand, in my opinion, the bridge decks, more importantly than the diamond grinding. But yeah, it's I think it's part of the iterative process that we go through. In particular, as we outsource more, we're relying on our consultants to help us answer those questions. And I think we have a tendency to always go back to the scoping cost, and a lot can change from that. And we don't put, we spend $6 to $7 million scoping a STIP. That's 300 projects that we're looking at. So we're trying to find that balance of how much energy do we put in before we actually commit project teams and consultant services to a project.
Well, it sounds as though we, although this is not a public hearing, we do have an individual that wants to address this. Is it on this specific issue? On this STIP item? Yes. This specific project?
Yes, they're doing the paving from Ashland up, correct?
Okay.
California to Ashland.
So you're welcome to join us. So same as this morning. So please do state your name for the record. And yes, and so we.
Sure, Benny.
Yes, please.
I had one other question.
Yes, go right ahead, Commissioner Keller.
I noticed here the diamond grinding costs went from $10 a square foot to 20. I mean, I'm used to cost increases. I've seen them, but that's a big cost increase. Was that a result of the experience on I-84 or?
Yeah, Chair Boehne, Commissioner Keller, exactly that. We had not done this work in 2013 before. We relied on what we've been seeing in California and other states that are typically doing this diamond grinding approach. And that project in Eastern Oregon that I mentioned went to bid last spring. So we really got to learn what was the contractor's approach to doing that work and the costs associated to that. So it's a reflection point for us to update our estimate. So yeah, it's a bit surprising, right? Doubling of the cost, but in my opinion, for something we hadn't tried before, learning from real world cost examples and updating that estimate.
Okay.
If it
Thank you.
prolongs the lifespan, I also heard you say, so we may have additional upfront, but if it buys us time on the back end, that might make sense.
Yeah. So my understanding is we're hoping to get 12 to 15 more years out of that section in Eastern Oregon. I think the similar approach in the Siskiyous on this project as well.
Excellent. Great. Well, Ms. Nassett, sorry for being so direct. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't opening up public comment again for just items that were not specific to this. So please go right ahead and.
Thank you.
Yes.
For the record, my name is Sharon Nassett. Thank you, Chair. Having to do with the safety issues, as they are repaving that area, actually I've drove to California several times, in steep areas that are very icy and snowy, if you, on sidewalks and on private properties and things, you go about 2 inches down under the concrete and you run these new plumbing lines, or actually it used to be old plumbing lines, underneath the concrete. At one end, you have a little metal strip that the water goes through, just like for coffee, and it's extremely hot, or you can do them cold, and it heats the whole driveway or sidewalk. And you don't have to shovel them, no salt, no nothing. And I have seen them on private drive as a real estate broker. I saw them in some nice homes in the Northwest Hills. And I went over to see, and they just had a little rebar over them, and then it wasn't even this really nice new blue stuff that is pressurized. And they can do it in the summer to make it cool. So it was very nice. The other thing was the road strip rumbles. Love them. In some areas, like in Hawaii and things where they have VOG, so people don't go the wrong way, those little strips are red, every once in a while yellow, but red if you're going the wrong way, and white when you're going down the freeway right way. But when you're going the wrong way, or you pull the wrong way, and you don't have to put more strips on, you just do one side red and one side white. And they had them in my auntie has them in the VOG. And the Jersey barriers, separation between the traffic or not, I've drove professionally and not, people love it. The traffic itself feels calmer. They're more secure. They're not trying to go around each other. They can't. And it helps. And then lastly, physical challenge was the last time I was here, signage. And you have enough signage right now, and if you added something that explained it's a striped line and the other, by just adding a few signs in with what you have, I think people would incorporate it, because I think they were talking about spending money to educate them. If it isn't right in front of them every single time, they may not remember. So grazie.
Well, thank you so much for those suggestions. That's, I hadn't even heard about the varying colors on rumble strips and different things, so thank you very much. Okay, other questions or comments? Yes, I would welcome a motion.
Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so I move we move the state capital to Bend. No, that's wrong. Tammy, quit putting these notes in front of me. That's terrible.
Forgive me for asking, were there Whoppers up there?
Okay.
It's the lack of Whoppers.
I request, or I move approval of an amendment to the 2018-2021 STIP to increase construction funding for Interstate 5, California State Line to Ashland by $8,992,089.
Okay, that includes the capital or not?
I think that we can fit it in.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Mac, I hope that Mr. Strickler can pole vault because you set the bar very high.
Thank
well
you.
done.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, so now on to the consent agenda, and I believe we have some work to do here.
Yeah,
So
Madam
Director
Chairman,
Garrett-
we will take this in, up several actions, so to speak. I think the first thing I'd like to do is for item number 1, specific to the meeting minutes. Since Commissioner Callery did not attend, I think he will abstain. So what I'd like to do is pull forward right now and ask the commission to approve the minutes from the October 18, 2018 OTC meeting and its workshop.
So moved.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay,
Excellent. Madam Chair, I'd like to move now to item number 3. This is the resolution for authority to acquire property. I would like to take this in 2 actions. The first, I would like to pull forward file number 9318-008, referencing CenturyLink, and seek approval for that specific file number, because it's my understanding Commissioner Van Brocklin's firm represents CenturyLink, and he will have to recuse himself.
okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to declare conflict of interest. My firm represents CenturyLink, and therefore I will not be deliberating or acting on this item.
Okay, so I'd welcome a motion.
I move for adoption of the
File number 9318-008.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? And that's been noted. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair. Now I would like to go back to the remaining files and consent calendar item number 3. And I would request approval of all those embedded in that item.
And I do need to just note that I am not participating in items 3 and 13.
Is it 3 or 9?
9 has a question mark. Bonnie gave me number 3 as well.
Okay,
But I am not voting, so I think we're good.
fair enough.
Okay. And we were muting, sorry,
So moved.
the microphones are not working to the right side of the table here.
Green blinks.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's
Motion
Brown,
carries.
Simpson, and Callery. Got it. 2 abstentions. Excellent. Madam Chair, I'd like to move to item number 7.
Okay,
This is the resolution for jurisdictional transfers specific to the city of Eugene. There has been a friendly amendment to update the language, just bringing a little more specific language to the resolution. And it's my understanding that the commission may have that language, and I would request removal. I will request approval of the updated language.
and my microphone doesn't work.
what's going on.
So moved.
Great. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, if we could, just for the record, if we could read the language to make sure that we're very intentional and specific, I'd appreciate that.
Go right ahead.
Oh,
Whoever.
no.
We don't have microphones.
Awanda was going to.
Got it, sorry. Madam Chair, I move to approve the resolution and amendment to the highway plan for transfer of state jurisdiction, control, and authority over the following highways from the state to the city of Eugene. Oregon 99W, between mileposts 118.57 through 123.37, and 125.48 through 126.02, excluding the bridges at mileposts 121.42 and 126.02. Also, Oregon 126, McKenzie Highway between mileposts -0.06 through 0.24, excluding the bridges at mileposts 0.08 and 0.09. And direct the department to take all actions necessary to transfer the underlying property interests identified in jurisdictional transfer agreement number 830.
Excellent. Thank you.
Wonderful. And if you try turning yours off.
I think it's 3 at a time.
Okay, that's it.
Quorum
We can
mics.
only have 3 going.
Okay.
Oh, that's the deal.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, Madam Chair, let us now turn attention to items 9 and 13. Those are the issues and activities related to Deschutes County, and you may want to say something.
Well, I just would note that I do not have a personal gain by any stretch, but just want to note for perception purposes that I will not participate in the approval of items 9 or the consideration of items 9 or 13.
Thank you, Madam Chair, I appreciate it. So with that understanding, I now would request approval of the remainder of the consent calendar items, and they are items number 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13.
So moved.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, we cleared that airspace. All right, so this concludes our formal business meeting. I again want to thank Lynn County for hosting us in the city of Lebanon, and what a beautiful facility. And so we will adjourn this portion of our meeting. Thank you.